Roll for Crit is supported by our friends on Patreon. Come join the High Rollers at patreon.com/rollforcrit. It is time to seize the day as we continue to look at another entry in Ravensburger's Alea line, this time Carpe Diem. In this game, you are founding a new Roman family, and your goal is to build up your district by getting buildings, locations, and gathering resources to prove your plot of land is the best.
This game was up for Kennerspiel Des Jahres a couple years back, and this is the second edition printing, which is pretty much the same rules, but we'll go over it for you right now. Players are competing to gain the most victory points over a number of rounds based on several different factors. On your turn, you will take your little patrician figure, and you'll be moving them one space to either the left or right to a different blueprint. Each blueprint has a set of tiles associated with it, and once you arrive there, you will choose one of those tiles and place it on your own personal board. It has to go somewhere adjacent to an existing tile, and it also has to match up with its surroundings. So a lot of these tiles will have just half of a building or half of a landscape, and they need to match somewhere that makes sense, including the frames on the edges. So you can't just put them wherever you want. They have to either complete something or start a new building in a place that makes sense. Each one has its own special abilities. If you're able to complete something, it will either give you resources of some kind or perhaps be worth points later at the end of the game. If you place a tile on top of one of those writ tokens, those scrolls on your board, then you also get to move one space along on the prestige track, which will help you out and increase your turn order during the forum card phase. Like I said, different tiles, when completed, can give you different rewards, like fish, or like grapes, or coins, which can be used as any other resource. Or there's also bread, which can come in handy. You can spend bread during your turn to move to any location of blueprint that you want, or to not move at all if that's your desire. And again, you'll be able to use it later during the forum card phase. Some tiles do special things like allow you to take one of the tiles along the bottom edge of the board as a bonus that will help you complete things that you need, or it may result in getting you a fountain card, and the fountain cards are secret goals that will give you extra points for having different types of tiles completed at the end of the game. Once all of the tiles are cleared from the board, every player has taken as many as there are in their various turns, that's when you move on to the forum card phase.
The forum cards are how you're going to score the majority of your points or possibly lose some. During this phase, you're going to look on your position at the top of the track. Depending on the order there, those players get to put their pieces down first. In this case, red, yellow, green, then blue. When it is your turn, you're going to place one of your pieces on these circles made by the cards, not the half ends. Now, you'll probably want to choose a position where you can score both cards. For if you're unable to complete one, you will lose 4 points. Now, for the buildings, it's very obvious. Have them on your map. For resources, you can actually pay them a number of times. So in this case, the red player can pay 1 fish and 1 coin. Coins are wilds that represent all 4 of the other resources, and get that many victory points. Now, not all forum cards will reward you with victory points. Some may give you bread, coin, or increase you on the prestige track. Bread is also very important here, for if you cannot complete something, you can spend 3 bread in order to say you complete it instead of losing those 4 points. After each player has placed their piece on the forum cards, you're going to actually refill the blueprints and repeat the process. Once you go through 4 full rounds of gaining tiles from the blueprints and placing on the forum cards, you will then gain some extra points from either the fountain cards or the borders, which want to look at certain things on your board and see who's gotten the most victory points.
This was not our first time playing Carpe Diem. We played the original printing back in the day when it was first up for Spiel des Jahres, but this is now a new edition. It's a little bit fancier, a little classier as part of this new Alea line, which we saw with Castles of Burgundy, another Stefan Feld design that was also kind of upgraded to this new version. But we haven't reviewed the game formally, so we can talk in depth about our thoughts. It's definitely a Euro game. It's definitely a Stefan Feld Euro game where you are getting it's farming adjacent. It's not quite farming, but it's about the building up of things with this tile placement aspect. Not normally, I think, the genre of game we gravitate towards. But what are your overall thoughts on Carpe Diem? Do you think they changed at all from your first time playing to now?
Well, first off, I still think it is a farming game because if you don't do the farming spaces, can't imagine you're gonna win. That being said, two major changes in this game make a big difference and would have been major misses for me from the first edition we played. First one is the movement. As we showed in the video, you move from adjacent spaces. In the first one, it was this crazy, like almost pentagram-like thing of jumping around, and it was just really confusing and really funny to watch yourself go like, all right, I'm gonna place the tiles, which was just I think it was worth dropping. I think that was for the best. The other was the back of the tiles. There are white and black tiles that come out throughout the game, and in the previous one, it was light green and a darker green. And I'm not colorblind, and I had troubles with these. So seeing white and black was just like, yes, why not?
Yes, you can't confuse those. So the movement thing, if anyone's confused, was actually changed in a later printing of the first edition, but for us, that is a new thing. And like you said, there's the backs of the tiles, and I think some other areas got some visual upgrades. I still found I had a lot of trouble distinguishing some of the different, the farmland from the vineyard, from the whatever it is. There's a lot of green and brown going on.
While they
on dark
made a lot of those
backgrounds.
changes that I talked about and I liked, it's not everything. There were plenty of times where both like, I didn't. That's not a vineyard half. That's for that. And like the one that makes the chicken a resource is sort of a brown pen. Like they really wanted to keep it as realistic as possible, which it becomes really annoying, when you're trying to find out what matches together for pieces, or, when you're trying to fit that piece in, like, all right, I need to have 2 grass edges and that.
I would recommend if you're playing Carpe Diem, you want a well-lit room because you really want to be able to see, because a lot of it is just dark too, those dark browns and greens and blues. So that's a little bit of a disappointment. Beyond that, I mean, the game itself, I think it's the same one pretty much that we played, and it is still a solid design. I certainly enjoy the more solitaire aspect of laying the tiles in your personal little area and deciding how you want to put them. I enjoy that puzzle. And then having that also with competing for the tiles. You have to worry about which ones other players are taking, and you really have to worry about which goals they might be trying to go for, because that can be scary. That can be a part of the game that for some players is a little stressful, and if you get locked out of something, that could hurt.
I am probably one of those people. The tiles aren't too bad, even though like there are going to be moments when you're like, I need a red building on the left, a bank on the right in grass, and someone takes that one tile when it comes up. But for the most part, if we were just looking at the tiling aspect, it's usually easier to pivot or be like, okay, that space is going to be empty. The goals, however, I feel like there's a very limited, like, look, I got the resources to do the chicken goal and the chimney goal. That's all I can get away with. And if you're not the first one to pick that, like even if it's not optimal for, let's say, for the other player to go for that, but they can still maybe do it and they leave you out, that could be -8 points for you.
It's tough. I mean, it's a game that does not hold your hand at all. But I do think I don't think it's really unfair, in my opinion. It is baked into the strategy, and that is part of it, is you having to look and say, well, I need to plan for maybe a couple different ones because someone else could take the one that I want, or I need to really work on getting those prestige points because I need to guarantee that I get first pick this round.
And I guess to me, it felt like it was so hard sometimes to pivot or make sure of that because, one, let's look at the prestige point thing. Either A, you just don't get the right buildings to put on top of them to show up. Like not even opponents picking them. Like you just don't have something that matches that space in which, you don't get that. Or B, for the goals themselves, once again, I think that we had a game where right now, all the goals want 3 fish or 1 of each resource or 3 chickens, and no one's closing pens. Just no one had that option. Now, you can choose to use 3 bread instead. And I feel like, though, and it said online, I feel like what's going to happen is, though, and this is my problem with, in the end, because it's so hard to get some of the things, bread is just going to be the only thing you care about. Just get a bread engine going, because then you don't have to worry about anything.
I think that is pretty strong, but there are only so many bread tiles. So if players are competing for those, you can try to prevent other players from letting that happen. And the order the tiles in is randomized. So I think there's enough variation in that. I mean, I think it will change if you play this game, a dozen times. I think maybe that's kind of a meta aspect that can evolve. I think bread is definitely strong. I just don't know that I feel confident saying that it's too strong personally. And I do think, again, for the goals thing, it's one of those things I think some players will really like, some players really won't. It's just, what do you like? What kind of game do you like? And this is one that is a little bit more punishing. You have to be very efficient, and it is about solving that puzzle in a really perfect way while still hopefully leaving yourself open if something happens. It's not the kind of game where you can just I'm going to do this strategy and that'll be fun, and next game I'll do this strategy. It's really is about careful planning and having a plan B, because you probably will need it.
There's also a good chance your plan B just won't show up either.
It's possible. I mean, it's possible. I think clearly you are. I know that's the kind of thing that you don't like, but I think it is just a preference. I think if you are the person who likes that kind of Euro game, this does do that style well. It's not my favorite thing either, but I see it for what it is, and sometimes I do like that.
Crits and misses for Carpe Diem.
Crits. The game provides a challenging puzzle as players compete to claim tiles and forum cards, and if you're able to pull off your strategy successfully, it can be very satisfying.
Not only moving your patrician correctly in order to pick up the right tiles at the right time so your board fits correctly, but mastering those forum cards such that you score maximum points and maybe ruin an opponent's day will be a rewarding feeling if you're able to execute it correctly.
This edition of the game includes some welcome visual updates with the black and white backed tiles, as well as altering the movement style between blueprints so that it is more straightforward.
This will help cut down unnecessary time, such as setup, as well as finding out what tiles are actually available to you on your turn. Misses. This game runs a very tight ship. There is very little room for errors or opponents' tomfoolery, such that for players who like a bit more leeway, they may be a little disappointed by the end of the game.
It is a very tight puzzle that doesn't give you a ton of room to maneuver in, so unless you've got a plan B and probably a plan C or D up your sleeve, you could be frustrated by this one.
We applauded it for changing the color of the back of the tiles, but we think there are some other visual upgrades that could have been done, especially to the front of the tiles. Now, the buildings don't need too many differences because the roof colors are pretty different, but we felt like a lot of the landscapes were a bit too close in color and maybe could have either been changed in a way with either the art or maybe a bright outline to make sure you're matching the same landscape types.
This new edition is pretty true to the original, and it's very consistent in theming, but from a purely visual perspective and looking at it from terms of playability, it would have been great to make this one easier at a glance to know exactly what tile did what wherever you were taking it from. I think it's interesting if you look at our crits and misses, they kind of actually mirror each other. We have a crit of, the puzzle is great, but it can also be really punishing. And the new visuals and stuff are great, but also the visuals still aren't good enough. And I think that maybe kind of sums up my feelings on this edition of the game is it's good, it's solid, it does some things that are better than the old version, but not really enough to differentiate it. I think if you have the first edition, there's really no reason to buy this one unless you really want the new box art and you want to uniform with your other Ravensburger games maybe. But overall, it's just like, it's still solid. It's still not really my cup of tea. But if you like the Stefan Feld games and you like that style of gameplay and you don't mind the murkiness and the kind of, in my opinion, drab theming, then I think this is one you will get a kick out of. I mean, it was nominated for the Kennerspiel, so you know that it's worth looking at.
For me, I'm the kind of guy who always prefers when there's a bit more leeway in my games, be it a video game like Mario or a board game like this. It didn't feel like either that, compared to maybe some other difficult board games I've played, that it was because, I should have known I got left or right. Like maybe I should have predicted that 5 turns ahead. All right, I should take the chicken coop and then the bakery and this because Jonathan's probably going to go there and grab that 3 or 4 turns in advance. But a lot of it just felt like I just could not get that 2 or 3 tiles I needed to survive this round and not take the penalty. And, like I said, if that's my preference and how I just feel about these things. I do think, honestly, the visuals is a much bigger miss. Because to me, that's actually stopping the game more. And that was even more you. Like, there was a lot more times you're like, is this, like, we're playing in a room with windows. We weren't playing in a dark, like, basement. And you're still like, no, that's a vineyard. That's not what I need.
Needed a lot more lights. Yeah, I really struggled. And I think even just if the theme were a little bit more fun, that would probably even encourage you to get more into it and maybe get past some of your hang-ups about it.
I'm not saying dinosaurs, but...
But even if it was the same theme, but just the artwork popped a little better and looked less like, I'm sorry, but boring.
Overhead.
Yeah, I think there would be something that would go a long way. But it is what it is. It is that kind of game, but it's not like something like Castles of Burgundy, for instance, where I feel like the design is strong enough for me that it overcomes those issues. This one is pulled down a little more by them. And we'll also point out, some people have been saying that the frames in the edition that we played have a printing error on them. They give you these rewards for getting certain building types in certain places on your own personal board, and there is a different amount of the different building types printed on them in this version than there was in the original. Rather than it being even between all the different types, there's now a preference for one, and it seems like a misprint. We haven't heard an official response from Ravensburger, but that is something to take into account if you're thinking about getting this new edition. You might want to wait to hear about if they're going to fix that in future printings, or if you can just, get a sticker or something to overcome it, or just know for when you're going to play it, you might want to keep that in mind.
I mean, keep a lookout on, just check out Board Game Geek and stuff, or we know it's involving one of the vineyard tiles. We just don't know which one. So someone, maybe if they can compare it with the older edition, will be like, it's this one. And that way, you might even just take a pen and be like, farm. Because you probably couldn't tell whether it was a vineyard or farm anyways.
Yeah, there you go. That's true. So let us know. What do you think about Carpe Diem? Are you excited about this new edition, or will you be playing it maybe for the first time? Talk to us in the comments section and tell us what you think about any or all of the things we discussed in today's review.
Until next time, I'm Will.
I'm Jonathan.
And this has been Roll for Crit.
If you want to help out, you can check out our Patreon, or a simple click to like and subscribe can go a long way.
We really appreciate everything that you can do for us. We love you.